Okay, first things first, you just saw the total disassembly of the ignition system or the removal of the magneto and getting prepped for the spark plug. So pulling the spark plug off, these are a little tight, but you can crack them loose and usually then remove them just by hand. So with this engine, I assume or believe to have never been run unless tested at the factory for Briggs and Stratton. You will loosen the spark plug. Depending on your make model, could either be a 5/8 spark plug, a 13/16, or an 18 millimeter, which would just be standard. So this one is not an 18. I used a 5/8, and we'll put that socket back. So I also have all my tools out. So you can look pretty quickly and notice that this spark plug has never been fired. It is spotlessly clean and wonderful. So how do you gap a spark plug? The specification for this engine, the spark plug gap is 0.032 or 32 thousandths of an inch. So how on earth do we gap something like that? So you get what's called a spark plug gapper. There are lots of different varieties or variations of these, but this is my personal favorite. So what you do is you pull out all these little go, no-go gauges, essentially, or feeler gauges, and you find the one that says 0.032. Ooh, and you get to see my knuckle scab, so gross. So right here, if the light is appropriate, the number is 0.32. So right about there. There you go. So you lock it with the thumb screw, and you also pull out the adjusting end. What you want to do is see if this little piece of wire fits between the center electrode and the side or grounding electrode on the spark plug. You do that by pushing that through, and this does not fit. It is too tight. So the factory either set it to 30 instead, but instead what we're going to do is open it to 32 because that's what we found to run better. So this part of the tool you hook on the side electrode or grounding arm. We'll bend it and open it a little bit. And look at that. I opened it too much. So best way I've found over the years is find something hard to tap it on to close that gap back up. And if it hasn't closed it back up, you still, this fruit fly, I'm going to kill that little guy. You bring it back. So the perfect gap is once you can have this wire kind of get stuck like a dentist's pick, but still pull through. So that I did too much. Reopen it. And there we go. I can already tell, just like at the dentist where they put that pick in your teeth and yank and then, oh, and it comes out. That is now properly gapped. So to put the spark plug back in, you want to start it by hand. The spark plug does not go in up and down or sideways. It goes in at a weird angle. So this is one of the most important ones where you want to thread this in by hand and make sure you are getting it, there we go, appropriately snug without cross-threading it. Because if you cross-thread it on an engine like this, you're essentially destroying the threads in the head, which is not good. So there we go. I got it all the way in by hand and just did a final snug with the impact gun. If you heard that little click noise just now, my hand was on this muffler, and I unfortunately knocked out one of the 4 little screws. Oh, thank goodness. But I found it. So we're just going to leave that there so it doesn't happen again. Now we are going to work on getting the magneto in. So instead of standing now, I'm going to sit on this stool, and hopefully we're going to make this happen in under 8 minutes because that is what we were limited to by this video. So here we go. The magneto will go back onto the flywheel. So service manuals will state that you want to have the magneto by here, and the magnet will hold it in place, and you use a gapper. What have I found over the years to be the best gapper with the most success? A dollar bill. If you really, really want to go fast, you could try a 20. But in all reality, that really makes no difference because these are the same thickness. And I'm just trying to be funny. Well, yep. And that silence is about the same response I get from everyone else. How do you know which way this goes back on if you don't remember? Well, the first dead giveaway is the tab for the black ignition wire. That goes on the back. But also, you will see in writing, it says this side out, so it would face outwards, and CYL side, which means the cylinder side. So before you forget, you hook up that black ignition wire. That is now hooked up. Try to fish your high tension wire or your pretty much the high voltage wire that the 7 or 5,000 volts travels to for the spark plug. Fish that back in under the shroud. There we go. The grunting is not necessary. That's just an added perk. You will also see then that in this metal shroud here, there is this little opening, and that is where the wire is going to go under, pop out, and clip onto the spark plug. So once that magneto is attached, this is going to make a lot more sense. So, oh no, I shouldn't have moved the camera. Here we go. So what I'm going to do is do what I have always done, just because that's what I'm used to. So in ignoring the idea of using the magnet, we're going to do it how I've always taught my students. So first things first, we're going to get a little socket and an extension, and you're going to run these screws in. Now look at these screw holes. If we can zoom in, these screw holes do not have a lot of metal around them. So if you strip this hole, you're pretty much toast. You'd have to have someone TIG weld aluminum, or you just scrap the motor or replace the engine block. That's not good. That's what I had to do with that first motor we saw at the beginning of the year. So we're going to start these by hand, just like that. We are going to bring them in with the handheld extension and 7mm or 8mm, 7mm socket. We're going to now slip. Oh, look at that. You can see a little red light blinking. That means I'm yelling. We're going to slip the dollar bill between, sorry, I already tightened that too much, between the flywheel and the magneto, just like that. If I don't struggle too much, probably be easier with the 20. Do gentle thumb pressure against the magneto while you snug it. So when you tighten these two screws, I always go by, again, the rule of wrist method. When the ratchet starts to move my wrist muscles, it is typically tight enough, especially with something where you're running a steel bolt into an aluminum cylinder. So snugged, and now that is tight as well. And you go, oh no, I want my money back. There you go. Rotate the flywheel. And now the gap that you have between the magnet on the magneto and the flywheel is a couple thousandths of an inch, which is the thickness of the dollar bill. And we have found over the years for that to be the most perfect adjustment. Otherwise, you're using a feeler gauge, and that can be a problem. So at this point, we are back to where we were. We now have this in. Spark plug is gapped, and if it was dirty, you cleaned it. We've got the black high tension wire going under and coming out of the shroud, and we're ready for reassembly. So what I am going to do to make things slightly easier for you and possibly more interesting is get the 10mm onto my impact gun. We're going to remove all the bolts from their bolt holes so that I can do this a little snappier for you. And we are going to put our pull start on. There we go. One last one. Come on. All right. So now we've got our pull start right here. You can see, right, the little fingers come out for the cup of the flywheel. When you put this on, you have to make sure that the part of the red goes through these fingers right here. And I'll show you both before and after on that one. So we're going to get these in. Those are on the top. Kind of give it a little help. We're going to start these bolts, because these are the second most stripped bolts on the engine. Starting that by hand. Then we are going to get to the second bolt up. Meow. Starting it by hand. So then I can now not strip it and go super slow. There's zero resistance. Then if this were on your cart, you'd be bending over and looking. But since I have it dry in my garage, we're going to go this way. Started it by hand. Now very slowly go. So now I'm going to just give it a little zip so we don't strip the holes. And our pull start is now back on, which is awesome. Now we are ready to return the air filter shroud / housing back on, in addition to the switch plate and other fun stuff. So I'm going to pull these 2 screws out real fast. I might get zoomed in for a little bit. You can see my computer printer is behind us. Oh, the joys of remote instruction. Mr. D's garage is now his office, and it's never my living space. Well, not yet. We'll see how it goes once baby number 2 makes its way into my household. So we are going to start that one by hand. We're going to slowly zip it in. And the zipping in I'm doing with the impact gun right now. Realize when we are in class, you will just be doing that same thing, but with a ratchet. If I did this with a ratchet for all the videos, see that cross thread? You would be here a lot longer. So those 2 are now in and tight. Remember the 3 fingers into the 3 holes for the air filter. Lock them in, slide her up, and then we will gently make sure that's in place. It is. Start every nut and bolt turning by hand. A bit repetitive, eh? Then snug it the rest of the way. And then we will remove these 3 one more time to put the switch plate on. And I'm sure most of your brains have just stopped right now because you're like, he's just about done. But wait, there's more. So if I were really good at filming things and could figure out stuff with the camera better, I would try to now show you a spark test. However, positioning of the camera with, how do I word this? With the wobbliness of the table and tripod, I don't feel that we would have a very beneficial video, or it would be terrible. So I'm going to find you a separate YouTube video on that to view, excuse me, and you'll be good. And here's the final screw. So you see at most shops, if you had a bad ignition gap, corrosion on that magneto, a bad wire, or trying to think what else, bad spark plug, we could have put the spark plug back on, in and out, and no big deal in what, 3 minutes? And clean that magneto point, and a shop could charge you then potentially $140 for a tune-up. But usually with those tune-ups, they also do include brand new spark plug instead of cleaning, but it'll be clean and gapped. An air filter, which is about $14. A oil change, which is about $6 for that quart of oil. And a carburetor cleaning, which is about 30 minutes or more of work, with a gasket set, which is probably $14. So they're putting like $40 to $50 of parts into your engine, and maybe 40 minutes of work, and you end up with a tuned-up mower. But you can see just how easy it is to do something like this by yourself at home. So if we were at Fenton, Mr. D's 40 minutes or 22 minutes of videos here would be your 1 to 2 class periods of work for that lab. And that is how we do a magneto adjustment and a spark plug gapping. I hope you enjoyed. Have a good one, everybody. And I'm going to go buy some candy.